jump scares, a slow burn atmosphere, and the creeping dread of the unknown. As a horror fan, I chased that adrenaline rush. When I booted up the Dead Space Remake, I expected the standard thrill ride, the miniature heart attacks you get from action horror staples like Resident Evil or Silent Hill. After all, Dead Space was heavily inspired by the former, even pitched by its creators as Resident Evil in space.
Some of my influences to make Dead Space from the game industry were definitely the Resident Evil series. One of the things I would say to the team is we're going to make Resident Evil in space.
While both belong to the survival horror genre, the terror in Dead Space hits differently. Horror media rely on the tension and release cycle and rewarded thereafter with what is known as the safe room phenomenon, where moments of sheer panic are rewarded with peaceful respite to roam freely. Dead Space doesn't do that. The tension here is unyielding. Clearing a room doesn't guarantee safety. In this video, we're diving into the science behind the horror and explore the psychology of what makes Dead Space such an effective horror medium, how its unique AI systems relentlessly haunts you and hacks your brain. Welcome to the science of fear in Dead Space.
Welcome to the USG Ishimura.
To get a better picture of how the game's AI takes advantage of our own evolution and deliver a truly dynamic and unscripted horror experience, we must first take a look at how our brain processes sensory information to trigger our fear response. When we consume media, video games, or otherwise, sensory data travel from your auditory receptors, your ears, and photoreceptors, eyes, and hits the thalamus, your brain's primary relay station. The thalamus simultaneously sends these information down two separate paths: the prefrontal cortex and the amygdala. The prefrontal cortex is your logical processor. It analyzes the sensory information, provides context, and helps you form a calculated response. It helps you think through choices and directs your behavior, letting you choose better options. The amygdala is your primitive alarm system. Designed for fast, non-conscious perception, it reacts to indistinct signals or those lacking in fine detail, such as a clanking sound or a quick, blurry movement. It then instantly assigns emotional response to these signals. Among such emotional response is terror. Put simply, the amygdala triggers an automatic, involuntary panic response, while the prefrontal cortex tries to prevent you from reacting automatically and lets you weigh in your options. Here's the catch. While sensory information is relayed simultaneously by the thalamus, they reach the amygdala first, just 20 milliseconds, but takes about 200 milliseconds to reach the cerebral cortex. That means your body reacts before the cortex identifies what the object actually is, before you even have time to understand what's happening. This extreme startle reflex overrides your logic. In psychology, it is known as the amygdala hijack, and it causes what we know in gaming as
Swear to God, I'm gonna allow Barack Obama to tongue kiss my sister.
This is still concerning. I see you. Oh, I can only have two pieces. I can only have...
Jump scares are a staple of the genre. They're designed to frighten the audience with a sudden, shocking image and a jarring sound. It is the easiest type of scare to implement. Unfortunately, because they're so simple, they're often overused, thus considered a cheap and lazy scare. Tension, however, is an entirely different beast. If jump scares are cheap fast food, a carefully curated tension buildup is a 5-course meal. It is much harder to pull off because it requires a delicate balance of uncertainty and anticipation. A media must provide just enough stimuli to tickle the amygdala's alarm bells, but not so much that it triggers a full hijack to override your cerebral cortex. It creates a psychological tug of war. Your amygdala is screaming, danger, but your cortex is desperately trying to stay analytical so you can survive. This is what is commonly known as being on edge, hovering on the absolute verge of panic, yet forced to stay intensely focused. Okay, so in the context of horror games and movies, we have established what the amygdala hijack is and how it is responsible for triggering the body's startle reflex, otherwise known as the jump scare, as well as our fight or flight response, which causes us to be on edge or hypervigilant. To remain scary, a game has to constantly exploit these survival instincts through scripted events. We all know the drill: tension, fight, and release, rinse, and repeat. You clear a room, and that area will remain safe until you need to go back there for story progression. Don't get me wrong, these breaks do serve a purpose. They give us a necessary dopamine hit, the exact same spike you get from eating junk food or watching a Karen get publicly humbled. This is what makes horror games so appealing to us. However, as gamers, we are wired to find patterns. When survival becomes predictable, logic replaces fear, and the horror dies. Dead Space takes advantage of these primal instincts in a way no other horror game does, and basically throws pattern and predictability right out the window. The solution lies in its two unique AI systems. Like other games, Dead Space has scripted events. Those initial scares when you enter a new area, totally scripted. But since they are tastefully done and carefully curated, they make for a great horror experience. The real magic, though, is when the intensity director takes over. This is what dynamic horror is all about. This occurs when you backtrack or linger too long in a previously cleared area. Beyond just location, the director also factors in your ammunition count, Isaac's health and stress levels, more on that later, the time elapsed since the last encounter, and the game difficulty setting. Keeping track of said conditions, the intensity director curates random events in the game, such as the lights turning off, a distant disembodied voice, clanking sound of heat pipes, volumetric fog rolling in, necromorph attacks, or any combination thereof. Over 1,200 dynamic events to be exact. By completely randomizing these encounters, the system strips the cortex of its ability to predict threats. Because the logical brain can never confidently determine that an area is safe, it cannot send the stand down signal, leaving the amygdala in a perpetual state of vigilance. By feeding players these stimuli, the director keeps baseline stress levels high. When a player's baseline stress is artificially elevated, the threshold required to trigger an amygdala hijack drops significantly. A minor event that would normally be ignored by the cortex suddenly becomes enough to trigger a severe physiological reaction. So we now know the technicalities, but how does this translate to real-world experience? For me personally, as a gamer who likes to explore the whole map and do a lot of backtracking in fear of missing out some secret area or hidden supply storage, it is extremely effective. I can't stress enough how many times I was surprised of attacks from areas which I was sure I already cleared. Not just necromorph attacks, just the environmental manipulations earlier mentioned was very effective in keeping me on my toes. The sound of internal vents, disembodied voices, and whispers kept me on alert while casually searching for supplies. I play a lot of horror games and have not come across a system like this, which piqued my curiosity and led me to research what the hell was going on after my first playthrough. But, most of the time, I only feel the intensity director when backtracking. When I first set foot in new areas, it's just like your ordinary scripted events. Well, there are the occasional vent sounds, but the combination of the dynamic events in the director's arsenal is best experienced when you backtrack, or when you play in the highest difficulty setting. So yeah, if you're the kind of player who likes to stay in and explore a certain area of a map because of FOMO, then you get the most out of the intensity director. Otherwise, it has the same mechanics as your regular horror media, with very rare dynamic events, if any. Remember that the Intensity Director monitors the player's stress levels to manage and direct its 1,200 random events. But how does it do it when we're not even hooked to any monitoring equipment? How does a game affect a player's stress level, vitals, and emotions? The Alive system, or the Adrenaline Limbic System Response, Intelligent Dialogue, Vitals and Exertions system, serves as the crucial bridge between the game and the player's physical body. In many games, a protagonist's dialogue remains flat and stoic, which inadvertently comforts the player by projecting control. The Alive system adjusts Isaac's voice acting across 3 distinct physiological states: normal, fatigued, and injured. When Isaac's HP is low, he flinches or winces in pain. When he is stressed or fatigued, his breathing is labored and he speaks as if he is gasping for air. Additionally, his heart rate adjusts in accordance to his physical state.
Nicole? It's me. Nicole? It's me. Nicole! It's me.
During my first playthrough, I didn't pay mind to this mechanic. I just noticed that there was something different to the game that I liked, but I just couldn't put my finger on it. That is, until I played RE Requiem.
Independently.
Heard they had an internal dispute. Think it's related?
That's all I've got. There's been an increase in government surveillance. Looks like my fan base is growing.
Some things never change. Watch your back. I'll contact you again soon.
In that instance, I was staggering my way down that building for quite some time, desperately trying to find health items. I even remembered appreciating Leon's stagger animation and wincing sound, which I admit does add to the sense of urgency. That is, until I heard him talk in that normal voice. I swear, as much as I enjoyed Requiem, it really stripped me out of immersion and chipped away that feeling of immediacy and the pressing need to find health items. That stark contrast between the wincing and staggering gait and that normal speaking voice really don't go together and felt really out of place. Then, in that instance, I remembered Dead Space, and I was finally able to figure out the element that added to that sense of immersion in that game. So we know that the Intensity Director monitors Isaac's physical state through the Alive system and uses this information to trigger dynamic events. But how does the Alive system affect a player's emotions and stress level? Enter mirror neurons. These remarkable brain cells fire whether you're performing an action or just watching someone else do it. They don't just process what you see, they actively simulate it. It's why a genuine smile is contagious. Your brain literally activates its own emotional centers to match. This is the biological engine of empathy, allowing us to mentally step into someone else's shoes and catch their emotions. So, the theory goes, watching Isaac gasp, limp, and bleed on screen forces our mirror neurons to resonate with his agony, making us feel his exhaustion. But here's the reality check. If you're a seasoned horror fan, Isaac's heavy breathing alone might not be enough to induce a panic attack. Ultimately, the Alive system's psychological impact depends on one's own horror tolerance. For a casual player, it's a masterclass in shared trauma and mirrored exhaustion. For someone like me who consumes a lot of horror media, the result might not be as dramatic, but when combined with the Intensity Director's unpredictability, it improves immersion and impart a sense of urgency and desperation to find health items before that necromorph bursts out of nowhere. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. Have a great day, y'all, and peace out.